It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with financial advisors Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I am your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the show. With me in the KFG studios, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
If you are planning on retiring in 2020, you might be second-guessing that decision due to the crazy changes we've seen in the world this year. Is it safe for you to retire this year? We'll help you know how to make that decision with clarity and confidence this hour on Wise Money.
Getting a ton of questions, and I love it. We love to hear from you. We've got a lot of questions we're going to be hitting in the second half of the program, and you can submit questions to us in 3 different ways. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. All over social media, we get a lot of questions on our YouTube channel to some of the videos there. So check us out wherever you're at on social media. Just search The Wise Money Show. And then all over on our website as well, you can find more information about the show and submit questions there as well. Just search wisemoneyshow.com. All right, let me tell you about Amy. So Amy reached out to me in January. I've served her and her husband for probably 10 years or so. And on and off through changes in their life. And she's been more and more concerned over the past couple of years as her company was bought out by another company, and she wasn't sure if there was going to be overlap and layoffs. Well, January, she reached out. This is before the pandemic. Reached out and said that her job was eliminated. And it was emotional. It was hard. But this is about a year and a half before she was hoping to retire. And so she was thinking, well, I guess I'll find another job, but Mike, can you change the plan, adapt the plan to see if I can actually be done? And so we talked about it. And you know what I said, it would be no surprise to you guys, but maybe surprise to you listening. I said, well, track your budget. We'll meet again in March or April, but track your budget. I want to know what you're spending because we've been assuming that you'll spend this much all these years, but that's such a big variable that let's find out what you're actually spending. Well, sure enough, the pandemic hit, and now it's really hard to find jobs, right? And I met with her this past week, her and her husband. And the good news is they're tracking their budget, and they're spending a little bit less than what they actually thought with buying a computer and some other one-time expenses. And I was able, through the planning process, tell them, congratulations, you can be done. It was emotional. She cried. She was actually afraid, at this stage, and her age, she was a little concerned to go back to work. She was in sales and would be going around talking to different people and was a little concerned for her safety. And so it was a huge relief. And I was extremely proud of them, especially because we've just run the miles with them all those years. So the question is, if you were planning to retire in 2020, are you still ready? And we're going to be talking about that here today.
Well, I think that this is maybe the quintessential financial planning question because it touches so many different areas of someone's financial life. You can't make this decision in a vacuum, which is why, you didn't just have one conversation about retirement with this client, Amy, that you were referring to. It was a process. It was reevaluating some of the assumptions that you guys had made and what goes into their financial plan.
Right. And as you work with your financial planner, and as we say, make sure they're certified, a certified financial planner is going to work with you in 6 different areas. So I'm going to run through the 6 areas of financial planning real quick. The big idea is that you've got a roadmap from where you are to where you want to go. So from where you are today, for the rest of your life, what does your financial picture look like? And is there congruency? Can what you want to do, can that be done with the existing resources, and how do we allocate those resources? So we start with present financial position. I love, Mike, you used the B word, and you said, hey, go back to the budget and see if that's possible. Because if you're planning on retirement, what I would encourage you to do is make sure that the 2 to 3 years prior to retirement, if possible, you live like you're in retirement financially.
Yeah. Dress rehearsal.
Yep. Because I will listen to folks and say, well, what do you think you'll need in retirement as we get into the factors of retirement? And they'll say, well, I think we could do $3,500 or $4,000. And I look and I'm like, well, there's just no way. Mm-hmm. When you can see their entire picture. Now, I don't tell them there's no way, because self-discovery is much more powerful than having someone telling you that's crazy. So we say, okay, well, how do we figure that out? Is that possible? Let's give that a shot. And let's make sure we've got your 3 bank account system working for you, and so that your delayed spending is in place, your emergency fund is in place, cash flow works. Can you do it? And so, because I want to know if I'm saying, hey, I can get it done on $3,500 and I really need $6,500.
This is also where you're looking at, well, do you enter retirement with the mortgage paid off, or can you afford to still have a mortgage? So we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Health insurance is a huge variable in retirement. You can't talk about retirement without talking about health insurance. And so that applies to your entire protection plan as well. Tax planning is the third area of your overall financial life. And most people have a hard time getting through retirement successfully if Uncle Sam is reaching their hand into the money bag there too frequently. So you've got to be very tax sensitive. So tax planning is extremely important.
And that brings up your investments. How should your investments be structured in various tax shelters to make sure that the growth that you need is happening, but also that the risk that you are comfortable with, it will allow you to achieve your retirement goal. Yeah. So you have investment planning, and that goes into the next area. The 5th area is retirement planning. So again, that's the roadmap. That's where I am today. Where do I want to be? And do I want to take a direct route, or do I want to wander and meander? And
it's also where we calculate what is a sustainable pace for you to live at when you get to retirement.
Sure.
So even those who have already reached retirement, they still need a retirement projection, because you need to know, are you on pace to run out of money too soon because you're spending too much right now, or are you at a sustainable spending level?
And then, of course, the 6th area is you've got to make sure that you've got a well-defined estate plan. Everything's implemented as well. And so all those retirement dollars and everything else are going to go directly to the right place if something happens to you. So that's this. You can't talk about retirement without looking at all 6 areas.
I agree completely. In fact, I actually met with a client just the other day, someone who we've been serving them for about 15 years in a more narrow capacity, just helping them with investments. And they've needed a financial plan along the way, but they're finally at that point where they're asking the question, hey, are we ready for retirement, or are we going to be ready for retirement? And John, the husband, asked, hey, what's the number? How much do I need to have accumulated? And he had heard, well, you need to have $1 million, or is the number really 1.5 million? I don't know. And that was my response to him. John, I don't know the answer to that question for you, but I do know how to get the answer. And it is found in financial planning. The reason the answer is different for every single family or every single goal is because there's different factors or different assumptions that go into the plan. Your life that you're envisioning, John, is different than your neighbor or your brother or your parents would have had. And so the help that we provide when we're running these retirement projections that Kevin was talking about is we help folks discuss and kind of wrestle through the 5 key factors or the 5 decision points that they have to make, which influence how much money you need to have for retirement. Are you ready? Or as we started the show, is it safe for you to retire right now?
Yeah.
And if I was just going to rattle those off real quick here, the 5 decision points that you have are, first of all, what age are you going to retire? How much are you going to be spending in retirement? What will your sources of income be? How much are you going to save between here and retirement? And then ultimately, what's the risk-reward trade-off that you're trying to set your investments to achieve? Those factors, which we could unpack maybe more in the next segment, those influence whether or not you really are ready.
Well, and they're all interrelated as well. And the point of the discussion today is they're also interrelated with what's happening in the world and the economy and your job. And you might not have control over all those things. So we're going to break that down for you. That and more coming up here on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is The Wise Money Show. You're at The Wise Money Show channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. Where you're watching right now, this is our weekly radio show that airs on a couple different stations in northern Indiana on Saturday mornings. We record the whole thing, including the breaks and bonus content, so that you can watch the whole thing right here. But additionally, throughout the week, we're airing Next Wise Step videos and other financial nuggets that you need to be mindful of as you're taking your next wise step. So again, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit the thumbs up button. Leave comments, questions below. Lots of people do, and we'll get back to you. Appreciate it. All right. So we had to hustle through that. I think let's talk about the changes, and we can point them back to the 5 factors.
Yeah.
So let's do the sort of the deeper dive into the 5 factors by, all right, what's changing during this uncertain time? And I don't think we need to go in any particular order. You know, for Amy's situation, she was planning on retiring at 60, and guess what? You're now retired at 58. And for you watching right now, that is extremely unusual. So that took a ton of planning for someone to retire 2 years earlier in a pandemic. Let me tell you, I want to tell you a little bit about their sacrifice. They've been living in the same house for as long as I've served them, since probably 2004 or 5. I think it's a $1,200 square foot. $1,200 house, 1,200 square foot house. And they've talked about moving. They've talked about moving to the river and all sorts of things. But that would have meant a mortgage payment and other things. And they said, no, having financial freedom is more important than having the perfect house. They have made significant cuts in their budget and so on so they could build up cash. They've got a decent amount of cash there as well. And they did their budget and said, well, we'll cut some vacations. We'll still travel. We still want to do certain things, but we're willing to cut some vacations in order to make this work. So they made some sacrifices in order for that goal to be achieved.
That's awesome.
So,
is she open at some point in the future to going back to work too? Just because, or?
Yeah, I mean, and her husband thinks she's going to be bored. He's a few years older than she is, so he's been retired for about 2 years. It's about a 10-year age gap, and so he's like, she's going to be bored. And, I think she might as well, but we'll see.
You mentioned she didn't feel safe going back to work right now, but she might not feel that same way a year from now or 2 years from now.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So, all right, well, let's talk about what's changing. I listed a few things in the outline, but we can always... And my guess is this banter back and forth is going to be more than this entire segment. So,
Hey, I liked how that worked with 6 areas.
Good.
That was better than me droning on for 6.
All right. Well, good. I wasn't sure. You gave me a look when I started taking it over, and I wasn't sure if you appreciated that or not.
Anytime you start plowing with my heifer, I'm going to have a little problem.
All right. A bunch of kids on YouTube watching right now.
What's a heifer?
All right. If you're planning on retiring in 2020 or maybe the beginning of 2021 or 2022, can you still do it? We're in a recession and we're in this pandemic. Can you retire? We're helping you with that today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. I want to point you to the YouTube channel for every episode of the Wise Money Show. If you're not a subscriber there, check us out. Go to YouTube, search The Wise Money Show. Subscribe, turn on notifications as well. You'll get every episode of The Wise Money Show as well as all of our daily updates, the next wise steps. So check us out there. You can leave questions there as well. So we just rattled through, if you're planning to retire, really at any time, but especially during these uncertain times, it's got to be made in the context of all 6 areas of your financial life. So it's got to be made in the context of a financial plan. Second, you've got to talk about those interrelated variables, those 5 factors to see what's the right recipe for you. Well, those 5 factors are being strained right now, and you might have to make some really tough decisions during this crisis and pandemic that could influence your ability to retire. Let's talk through it. Can you still retire in 2020, or what's changing that's going to impact your plan?
Well, I mean, you started the show with the story of someone whose retirement date got moved up, right? She was not planning to retire in 2020, but at least paused long enough to ask the question, does it make sense, or can we go ahead and retire a little bit early? Many people wouldn't be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And the reason is you shave 1 or 2 years off your working career, and you're giving up the potential to save more money, to let your investments grow a little bit longer. It's expanding your retirement period, right? Because we assume that the end of retirement is kind of a set date that none of us actually know when we're going to pass away. But the earlier you retire, obviously, the longer that marathon run will be for you. And so it just places more demands on your financial life. But this is actually one of the patterns that we see even outside of a pandemic type of environment. Many people set their retirement date out there at some age. 65 is maybe the most common age that we often see. But many then find themselves retiring just 1 or 2 years earlier, not because they necessarily wanted to, but because of events like this. They kind of got forced into retirement a little earlier. Could have been a health reason, could have been a downsizing or a lost job. Maybe their industry is being shaken up. Who knows? But it's part of the reason why if you're younger and listening today and you're still in the preparation stage for retirement, you need to plan as though the finish line is going to come earlier than you think, not later than you think.
And I, you're right, Josh, that this happens a lot. People typically are done working sooner than what they thought. But if you remember back to the Great Recession, the financial crisis, there were a lot of people that were laid off, and it was their layoff that turned into retirement because they couldn't find, they just never went back to work. This is a big problem, and we're starting to see that. I think we could be seeing that right now.
Well, it's not uncommon for businesses to begin offering severance packages and trying to right-size the business if they think that their business activity is going to be lower in the future, that sort of thing. So you just need to be prepared. We've done shows in the past about making sure that your financial life is decisionable at any given point. If a choice is just dropped in your lap and you weren't really counting on this, you weren't looking for it, but here it is, you have to choose whether or not you're going to accept a severance package or something like that. Are you in a position to be able to answer that question wisely?
And when you talk about your financial life being decisionable at all times, if you're thinking about retirement, a lot of times I've talked to folks and said, well, when are you thinking about retiring? They're like, well, 62, because that's when you retire. And I said, no. You are in complete control of when you retire. So not only do we encourage people to do a test run of their retirement with cash flow, I encourage people to sit down and make a checklist of what needs to be done before you're ready to retire. Because if you don't get very objective and get the emotion out of this, anytime I get emotional about my finances, I'm almost assured that I'll make a bad decision. So I need to get completely unemotional about this and say, okay, here's my checklist. I need to get these things done. And it was interesting. I was working with some folks the other day, and they were going to have him go till 70 to draw Social Security, because your Social Security after you hit full retirement age increases at 2/3% per month. So basically it's 8% a year that your Social Security monthly payment will increase. And so if you let that ride for 4 years, you've got a nice big payment, and the survivor gets the payment. So when they went to draw Social Security earlier than they'd planned, they learned something that's interesting. And maybe you may know this, you may not know this, but they learned that they could go retroactive for 6 months.
Yeah.
So they both did it because they were well over full retirement age. So they went back 6 months. Now they reduced their monthly payment by 4%, but they said, hey, those two lump sums let us actually kind of shoot the moon here for all you hearts players. So they were able to check off a number of boxes that they wanted to have done before they retired, and they had slightly less retirement income, but it was perfect.
So the first thing I think of, because I'm a geek, is tax planning. Make sure that if that's you and all of a sudden you've got this bigger income coming from Social Security, how Social Security is taxed is one of the most confusing things you could ever imagine. And so that makes me think of that made me think of that. The second thing that I would have you consider that this pandemic, this crisis might be influencing your retirement is your ability or willingness to save into retirement for the future. And we've been telling you from the moment that this crisis started, keep saving, keep saving. Kevin even said, hey, if you still have the cash flow, save more. Try to max out your retirement early. I think one of the byproducts of this, and I saw this really geeky analysis from the Federal Reserve, I think one of the byproducts of this is people are going to lose confidence in saving up in the future and saving up in retirement. And I think that would be an enormous shame and trade-off. So Josh, to that fourth factor, how much are you saving for retirement? Don't let this pandemic change your behavior in a negative way there.
That's right. If anything, the investment world may be throwing amazing opportunities at you to be a buyer when other people are running for the hills. They're sellers. We always say you make your money on the buy side when you're making new investments. And so if there's another pullback in the market or more choppiness ahead, that is the time to be a steady contributor to your account. And maybe, as Mike said, reevaluate, are you even on the right pace to begin with?
Yep.
Do you know, like the client John I was referring to in the last segment, do you know what the pace should be and what that end target is, how much that nest egg has to be by the time you get to retirement? Your savings rate or the pace that you're contributing to those accounts influences your readiness.
If you've seen a pay cut or you've been furloughed, I mean, that's a pretty serious reason to reduce your retirement contributions. I would urge you, don't pull that lever too quickly. Don't pull that lever too quickly because it could have a long-term impact on your ability to retire.
And you think of a couple of things. Number one is some found money. So you might have gotten a check for $1,200. Your spouse might have gotten a check for $1,200. That figure out what's the best thing to do with that. And one of the things that you could do, it might be cleaning up some bills or making sure your emergency fund is fully funded. But another thing that you could do is you could put some of that towards your retirement. And there are some industries that have actually thrived during this time, and they've been busier than ever. So if you're in that and you've been busier than ever, but you're not going to have that family trip this summer because you're just not going, there's some more found money. Let's go.
There's several other things we've got to talk about that will help you still stay on track to retire. So that and more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right.
Have either of you changed any travel plans for the summer?
I didn't have any.
No?
This is so bizarre. We came into this season without a single vacation, without a single trip on the calendar. And I mean, what a coincidence.
So we didn't go on spring break. Mm-hmm. We were going to go to Myrtle Beach for a week. We did not do that. We do have some plans that are still in place. It's kind of, they're both of these plans. It's kind of a tearaway jersey. I mean, it could happen, but they're both cancelable up until the last minute. And I wonder, does it make sense to do those? These are want to, not have to kind of trips. So what would a smart person do? That's kind of the $64,000 question. Yeah. That's been up for grabs for the last 3 months or so. Mm-hmm. So I do have plans. I don't know if they're going to be like all the plans that we've had.
Buy your travel insurance.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're making plans right now, there's all this talk about a second wave and, a dark winter. I don't know. There was some folks saying.
I wonder if travel insurance is just way more expensive now.
It might be.
I never buy travel insurance. And we have some plans this summer, and I'm going no matter what. So
wow.
Even if it's illegal, I don't know.
I hope Governor Whitler is listening to that because he might get shut down there, Joshy.
I was supposed to go to London for the Cubs Cardinal series in June.
Ontario? London, Ontario? Wow. Bummer. Apparently, Notre Dame is still saying they're playing in Dublin. I don't know. I don't know.
Won't be any fans in the stands.
Betcha. Dublin or nothing.
All right. So third Third segment here. If you needed to take a coronavirus-related distribution from your retirement accounts, does that throw your retirement plan off track? That's what we're talking about today, how you can still retire in the face of this uncertainty. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. If you want more content, more Wise Money content, I have a special announcement for you right now. Make sure you're following the Wise Money Show wherever you're at on social media. That's Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Just search the Wise Money Show. Why am I telling you this? Number one, just to make sure you're up to date. But number two, all this e-learning stuff that's going on. My kids had to do e-learning. I know Kevin's college student had to do e-learning. Well, Lindsay on our team said, hey, with all this e-learning, we should do an e-learning course for high school and college students, young adults, on personal finance. That's coming up this Wednesday. We're starting. It's going to be a 5-week series. We're going to keep it palatable. We're going to keep it short, but we're going to help your kids, your grandkids get the right foundation of skills in finances. So follow us on YouTube. Follow us on the Facebook page. Search the Wise Money Show. That's going to air this Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and then every Wednesday through June as well. So. All right, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. That's for the young adults. Let's talk about those of you that are looking to retire. First and foremost, if we haven't said it yet, there's all sorts of uncertainty, but you can still retire in 2020. You can still retire in 2021, in 2022. You just need to make that decision in the context of your entire financial situation. That's why we tell you you've got to do comprehensive financial planning, because from that perch, you can then evaluate the 5 factors and see if you're on track. And if you're not, because everything has changed, then you can easily look and see what the trade-offs are to get you back on track. That's clarity and confidence. One of the creative things you might have needed to do right now is to withdraw money from your retirement accounts when you're not retired, simply to get yourself through this crazy time. They call it a coronavirus-related distribution, or maybe some other type of withdrawal that you needed to take, even though you're not planning to retire just yet. Does that throw you off in your retirement, in your pursuit of retirement?
Well, it very well could. And the interesting thing about that is I think one of the areas that we are most helpful to our clients in is tax planning. One of the questions that I ask most folks when they come in is I say, who helps you with your tax planning? And they talk about who prepares their taxes, but they don't really have planning going on. So I was working with a client who, after 4 months of work this year, is getting 6 months of severance. And this client was thinking, hey, I'm not yet 59 and a half. I can do one of these coronavirus-related distributions, and I don't have to pay the 10% penalty. And that's true, but you do have to pay the taxes. You have to pay the federal and state taxes. And so if you've worked through April and got 6 months of severance, you've got 10 months of work in. And if you and he doesn't have his next job lined up, but if you get your next job in July, you got another 6 months. So now you've got 20 months of income on top of a coronavirus-related distribution. You're jumping 1 or 2 different tax brackets. So this is something that you want to be very, very careful of.
Well, and especially if you're taking that distribution just to be able to maintain your existing lifestyle, as opposed to maybe having a little bit more of a conservative or frugal response to this whole coronavirus shutdown mess that we've been in. I would hope that before you would start cashing in long-term investments or drawing down accounts that you thought were going to stay in growth mode for a while, that you've really scrutinized your budget as well. You know, the spending factor in retirement, it's one of the 5 factors. There are some amounts of spending that are discretionary, that you don't have to take that vacation right now. You don't have to do that home improvement right now. But compare that to the home repair that maybe is urgent. It's a need, not a want. It's more urgent and time sensitive. Those are the types of things that maybe you use this coronavirus distribution option to kind of keep you solvent, keep you from maybe being overwhelmed by the stress of a financial position that you never thought you'd be in right now.
It's very easy to get the clarity then on that. Even if you're thinking, hey, I might need to take 20 grand in a coronavirus related distribution, just update that in your retirement projection. You can very easily, it's easy for us because we've got a process. And so anyway, the other thing, guys, what do you think about Social Security? So if you received a pay cut or you're furloughed or laid off, is that going to influence or impact the Social Security that you're going to receive out there in retirement?
You know, the biggest factor that will influence your Social Security benefits is just the age that you start drawing.
Yeah.
And, you know, Social Security is averaging so many years of your working career, and your earning capacity is the highest 35 years. And so if the very last year, you're laid off partially, or you're working part-time or something like that, that probably has less of an influence compared to your decision to start drawing earlier than you had originally planned. Because you're receiving a sacrifice, like they're shaving the amount that you get. Think of it as roughly 8% per year that would be your reward for continuing to delay Social Security. Well, it's essentially an 8% sacrifice you're making to go early instead. The opposite is true as well.
And if you're earlier than full retirement age, it can be even more than that, depending on your situation. So how and when you draw Social Security is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make in your lifetime. So you don't want to just make it kind of flippantly. And because if you're before full retirement age and you are not clear about the outlook, and I was talking to, he's 62, and he said, well, I don't know when or how I'm going to go back to work, so I'll just draw Social Security and then see if I can get another job. Well, guess what? He's traveling today. They've already gone back to work. They went back to work this week. So had he drawn Social Security, he would have been either paying it all back because of the income that he was earning or stopping it. And so you can create a little bit of a mess for yourself if you do the Ready, Fire, Aim program. And that's where you really want to. So you can talk to someone at the Social Security Administration about that. But I would say look at that within the context of your financial plan.
Yeah, you know what most people do when they're looking at their Social Security decision is they just talk to their friends. Mm-hmm. You know, what'd you do?
Yeah.
And there's this perception, well, there's safety in numbers. That's what everyone does. They all draw at 62, so that's just what I'm going to do as well. If it was good enough for them, then it's good enough for me. The reality is that those people you're talking to may not have given it much thought at all.
Yeah.
They may have just been looking around and seeing what everyone else is doing. But, you know, financial planning is about trying to create the ideal future that you've envisioned for yourself, not the one that everyone else is living.
So what's the next wise step? Tie this all together. What's the next wise step that someone needs to take right now?
Well, you need to dust off your plan if you've got one. If you don't, call a planner. Call a certified financial planner who is not just an investment salesperson, because if you just get sold the right investments, there's no way they can be the right investments if your investment girl is not talking to your tax guy and is not working with your retirement planner, your protection planner, and really your present financial position coach.
And that's the right advice to give, even if we're not in a pandemic.
That's right.
You should not be marching into retirement without a game plan, without someone guiding you who's been there before. That's just wise, a wise approach to a transition that most people are going to make in life. Make that transition with someone walking beside you.
If you've never done a retirement projection, you got to build one right now. If you've done one in the past, you've got to update it right now. That is your next wise step, all in the context of your entire financial life. All right, we've got some great questions from fans of the show. That and more coming up on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right, really short break. What?
Jacket off really quiet.
Oh.
It's like so slow.
Oh, we've got
So
some
what questions
good
are we hitting?
stuff. The ones in purple at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Unemployment. My employer just...
All right. So we're starting with the 3 at the bottom?
Yeah,
Like the
let's
very last 3?
start with Jill.
Unemployment.
That one might even take the whole segment. It's good stuff.
13 minutes.
I bet I can make it 15. Sounds like a challenge. All right. Ready? Unemployment or the PPP. Woo! We got some good news about the PPP a couple weeks ago. That's refreshing. We've got questions from fans of the show. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. If you've missed anything, every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast wherever you listen. Just search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, and rate the show. I appreciate that. All right, so if you're planning to retire in 2020 or 2021, 2022, you can still do it. You can still do it. Don't be caught up in the fear, caught up in the hype. It all depends on your specific situation. Do comprehensive financial planning, work through the 5 factors and the trade-offs with your CFP, and see if you're on track. All right? Let's transition to questions from fans of the show. Great question here from Jill. She's 29 from Indy. Unemployment or get paid through Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. My employer was just approved for a PPP loan and asked if I'd like her to pay me or if I should stay on unemployment. Is there really any difference? I think I'll get more from unemployment.
This is an unusual question because most employers who have qualified for these PPP loans, in order to be forgiven for the loan, they have to be paying folks on payroll. And so most small business owners that I've talked to, they're not giving their employees the choice.
This is the first one
They're saying, hey, even if you were furloughed or something, I'm pulling you back in, and maybe you're not even working all that much in order to earn your paycheck, but it's just a mechanism for getting money into people's hands. But some employers, depending on the industry they're in and the pay scale that their employees are on, I've heard some employees actually resist the idea of coming back to work because life is better for them on unemployment, so it seems.
There was a big uproar. It made national news. I can't remember what it was, but the employees were so mad at the owner for getting the PPP loan because that meant they were just going to continue to get paid instead of going on unemployment, that they created this huge stink and basically sort of villainized the owner.
Yeah,
That's a shame.
As I understand it, and when you think about the PPP and the PUA and all of these, PUA stands for?
Pandemic Unemployment Assistance.
So that's the extra $600 a week that you can get from the federal government. Yep. Remembering the federal government has no money.
That's right.
Only what they take from you and me. So you can get the extra $600 a week, and you can get that for 16 weeks. So some people, if they're getting almost $400 from state unemployment a week, plus another $600, they're getting almost $1,000 a week. They might be making more money on unemployment than they would if they were actually working. But as I understand it, if your employer gets the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, they have to pay you. You have to come back to work and receive your paycheck, and therefore staying on unemployment is not an option.
It's not an option.
Right.
Yeah. So
It could just be misinformed employer there. Then,
Well,
huh?
it would be easier to get it. If you're an employer, it'd be easier to get it wrong than it would be to get it right, because this has been incredibly confusing. So while people are trying to survive and figure out, do I open or do I close? How many people do I bring back? What kind of service do I need to provide to my existing customers? Can we still manufacture our goods? All of this crazy stuff, you have to learn about a brand new program that no one knows about. It's kind of, make stuff up, if you will. So
That's funny.
Mike went down with you. So it's very confusing.
If we go back to Jill's situation or situations just like hers, where maybe you were working, you're laid off, you're on unemployment, there's a potential tax trap here as well. I think Jill framed her question, is one better than the other? Is it better to keep getting my paycheck through work or to go on unemployment? Well, let's just think about what disruptions there could be. With your normal paycheck, hopefully you have your tax planning dialed in real well. You're having the right amount withheld out of every paycheck. You're not getting to the end of the year and owing a bunch of money. But when you go on unemployment, there's a disruption there. Your income remains high, or the incorrect amount, no withholdings happening at the right level for you. It could create a surprise come tax time for you.
Absolutely. We've got Kevin. You said it well. It's just a confusing time. Most small businesses don't really understand the PPP loan and how all this works because they're just making stuff up. I mean, this is distorted economics right now. So make sure you're working with a team of professionals.
But for sure your tax advisor, because if you are bringing home $1,000 a week, and I remember early in my career when we were compensated a little differently, and I'd come home and tell my wife, hey, honey, I made $1,000 today. Right? This is an unusual day, so I'm really excited about it. And she would say, well, where is it? I'm like, well, I mean, I made $1,000. So where is it? Well, we have to pay the federal government $280 out of that. We got to pay the state $50, and we got to pay self-employment tax because I'm self-employed of $153. So we've basically got $530 left. So out of $1,000, if I took possession of that whole $1,000, and I said, this is my money, I'm going to be terribly disappointed at tax time. That's how a lot of self-employed folks get themselves in a lot of trouble.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you're looking at this unemployment check and saying, I've got $1,000 of unemployment income and it's all mine, and you're not making a provision to pay your state and federal taxes, you're going to have a problem.
And don't worry, if you want them to withhold for taxes, they'll withhold 10% federal, and they won't withhold anything for state. This is just crazy. It's just crazy. Anyway.
Right. And that is our life, is explaining stuff to people that doesn't make any sense. Because a logical person looks and says, Mike, why is that? That doesn't make any sense to me. And you say, yep, that's how it works.
So next question, speaking of things that don't make any sense, next question's from Valerie. She's 35 in Goshen. So super excited to get my stimulus check to use to pay down some credit cards. But now I noticed my credit score went down. I was under the impression that it would go up. I didn't close out the card. I just paid off the debt. Why did it go down?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think, this calculation that goes into your score, it's looking at several different factors. I think there's 5 of them primarily. And part of it is the amount of credit that you have available to you and what percentage of each card is kind of maxed out, so to speak. So it'd be better off, for example, to have 2 credit cards that are half filled up or a third filled up than it would be to just have one and have it nearly maxed out, because it goes into their algorithm. It's normally history of your payments that has a major impact. But this discussion, though, or this situation that you've encountered, where you paid something off, didn't close it out, you've triggered their algorithm.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, they don't make that real public either. They tell you what percentage of the FICO score comes from each of the 5 factors, but they don't tell you exactly how it's calculated.
Yeah, we are entering a jargon zone. So we try to stay in a jargon-free zone, but this is a jargon zone. So Valerie, great question. And it has to do with credit utilization, which is a fancy way of saying we have no idea. Because it really is, you have to look into the black box that they do their algorithm and figuring these things out, but paying off debt, it does affect your credit score because they look at, it measures how much credit you're allowed by your creditors versus how much of a balance you carry. So your credit utilization. And so I would encourage you, Valerie, keep your eyes on the prize. Don't look at your credit score. Your credit score is important. I once heard a wise person say, your credit score is your financial reputation. I love that. That may be one of the coolest financial things I've ever heard.
Our own Mike Bernard there.
That is fabulous. So yes, keep working on your financial reputation because that's going to impact what you pay for car insurance. It's going to impact what you're able to get a mortgage for, a number of other things. But don't get discouraged. You're moving in the right direction.
I think part of the problem or part of the reason we're a little puzzled by this situation is often it's the opposite that causes a reduction in the FICO score, your credit score, where you pay off a credit card and then you close it out. Right. You may be eliminating a long-term credit option. So if you have a credit card that's been open for 15 years, that has a positive impact on your credit score versus if you have a whole bunch of cards that were more recently opened or shorter history there. Those would have more of a negative score. Yeah. So if you just paid off an old card and closed it, you might be like, hey, I just did something good in my financial life. Why did my score go down? Or why did my financial reputation take a hit, as Kevin was alluding to? And again, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's why you have to be careful about the actions you take with credit in general.
A good reminder, if you haven't checked your credit report, not your credit score. I completely agree with Kevin. Don't focus on your credit score. And this change that you saw, Valerie, hopefully should just be a really minor change because your reputation, your credit, is really taking into account lots of different things. But you do want to pay attention to your credit report. Make sure that there aren't mistakes on there. Make sure there's not fraud going on. So I download my credit report once a year for me and my wife. So, all right, let's hit one more real quick, and that is.
Can I interject a question?
Yeah.
Do you download just the report to check the history for accuracy, make sure there's no fraudulent stuff going on, or are you also getting the score?
I am just looking at the report. I think the score is
kind of irrelevant.
And a lot of credit card companies now, one of the services that they add is they'll give you the score.
Yeah.
So, and the truth is, if you're applying for credit almost anywhere, they'll get your score, and you can ask them, "Hey, what was my score?" And they can tell you.
When you go and you try to download your report, they're going to ask you to pay $9.95 or $14 to get your score. Don't do that. Those scores, at least from those areas, I've heard they're not even accurate. So check it on your credit card, but the score really doesn't matter. Check your report once a year for accuracy, misspellings, and errors, and all that sort of stuff.
The only place in your financial life where maybe the score is having a little bit of influence is it could be affecting your home and auto insurance rates. It could affect your ability to get rent, that sort of thing. So pay attention to this, but just don't let it drive your decisions.
All right. Great questions. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, myself, and all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.